Hey, what's going on? It is time for another video going over the deep dive. That's right. I ran the Sultan of Dwarstock as my latest candidate to see what treasures it holds. It has a very nice chase card situation going on with both Scylla and Charybdis. How do I say it? Literally Nathan corrected me on this and I still can't get it right. It's what is it? Scylla and Charybdis. That's it. Charybdis. Okay, anyways. That's neither here nor there. My pronunciation is known to be terrible and I stick with it. But I did learn some things in the 10 games I played with this deck, and I actually really like the deck. I think it has a lot of fun capabilities. I would not rate it as top tier, but I would rate it as a solid deck. Nothing I would bring to a tournament trying to impress, but I would not feel ashamed bringing it trying to be strong, but not like top tier competitive. That's how I would describe it. It's a good deck to mess around with. So without further ado, let's go over my findings and some of the cards and how they worked together here. So here we have the Sultan of Dwarstock. And what came to mind first here was obviously the Sanctum and Saurian house. They have some really big bodies, good creatures. And I noticed that depending on how these houses came, it made all the difference for how the deck played. So I really wanted to see things coming in chunks. Like I wanted to make sure I can get a bunch of the Saurian cards coming all together, particularly Saurus Rex, Scylla, and Charybdis. Those are the ones I wanted to get on board right away, and then some of the other ones. As I played, if this was, obviously ideal world, getting the Council Primuses out and established ahead of time so that when I started capturing due to things like Spoils of Battle, which was a really good card for helping me get my opponent off check in a big way. Then obviously having Octavia was another thing, and then obviously Saurus Rex was going to be getting some Ember on themselves. One card that was pretty useless was Legion's March. I found this card maybe out of the 10 games I played triggered twice in the whole time. So there's that. Curse of Vanity, I found a lot of the times I was able to use this in a opening play almost, where I could just pretty much exalt an enemy creature, which was a lot of fun. Worked really well. And of course, we're going on to the Sanctum side of things. Squire Alice was clutch. Anafel was great for getting things set up. And then having Ardent Hero as just a means of smacking things that were big was very, very helpful. I really like that. The cleansing wave comes with a capture pip as well, but I found cleansing wave to be, I didn't get the really big burst I would have liked. It worked really well and it did help do burst, but I found a lot of the times I wasn't able to get those huge bursts. I think a lot of it is there's a lot of armor, so my creatures weren't heavily damaged. Obviously there is the dark minion here and it happens to have the damage icon on itself, so you can literally trigger itself. Even with that in mind, it was hard to play. One of the reasons being is the disc side of things turned out to be very crucial for how the deck functions in a really high capacity. Dominator Bauble was key because when I'm calling disc, there's not a ton of creatures, so I'm most likely using it to set up other things, whether that's the gateway to board clear, or if it was to use the Mark of Disc to actually buy me turns. This was the most crucial card in the deck when playing this. I found that it really helped me to just choose a house that was not very strong and make my opponent have to go that route again. It just made things really easy and it really bided me time to use my Sanctum and Soria the way I wanted to. Now, speaking of things that are amazing in Dis, Grim Reminder. This was the card that I think required the most fiddling, and early on I was always choosing the dinos because there is 8 dinosaurs, so it could get maximum value in terms of recursion of creatures. But I found that going dinos was not the best play, and actually choosing my friends in Saurian was really helpful, especially since Squire Alice instantly captured 2. And then you had things obviously like Baranon to set up that way, which was really helpful. And so I found a lot of the times that going Sanctum was the better play in terms of keeping things in check. and by in check, keeping my opponent off check. But I also noticed that doing so sometimes wasn't able to be done. There was just ways that sometimes you weren't getting the Sanctum creatures, so they weren't in your discard, and sometimes just because of the nature of how many dinos there were, it was easier to do that. Like my favorite was getting out early Charybdis and Scylla and Saurus Rex. If you can get those out early, then your opponent's going to go after them, so you get those dinos in your discard early, and then you can pull them back later for some really great effect. I cannot emphasize how amazing Scylla is. Out of Charybdis and Scylla, this was 100% the one that did the most work. It is like a board clear, just chilling out. There's so many times I saw my opponents just reap to get that Ember and sacrifice their creature. It was unbelievable. I could not get over how frequently, I don't know if they were misplaying or they realized that they wanted the Ember more than they wanted the creature in that moment. So this was the all-star of the deck for sure. So as I went through everything, I played a mix of AOA, Coda, Worlds Collide, and Mass Mutations, and I played the most against Mass Mutations and actually had the worst record against Mass Mutations. This deck did not do well in the set mirror match. Did really well against Worlds Collide, did pretty good against Coda. Only played one AOA game, so it's not really a good sample size. But I learned a lot about the deck as I played it and what to do, and the Grim Reminder was huge. But one thing I did notice is because of the fact that there's clusters of creatures in both Sanctum and Saurian, and I want them for the Grim Reminder play, I usually held off playing Dis till later on. And if I had a couple cards, I maybe even do an early play of getting rid of them and just moving on. But I noticed that if things came really disjointed, like I wasn't getting a good flow of cards, like it was just two 2/2s were happening too frequently, it really hurt this deck in particular. It only has 9 Ember on it, so it needs that flow. And that was one thing that I noticed. It was a fun deck, like I said. I really enjoyed playing it. I did feel at the end that the dinos were quite good. The thing I did notice about why Sanctum I feel is the strongest of the houses is because it's the action cards it had were all really good. Having Smite was really clutch. Having Spirit's Way sometimes didn't even get used, to be honest, but it was still nice to have that. Mighty Lance worked really well with finishing things off. Burning Glare, again, stunning an enemy, worked really well. And then obviously the Fangs had to be used sparingly. Most times it was discarded. But I just noticed the way that everything in Sanctum is pretty powerful and did work, where I cannot say the same thing for Saurian. But what I did notice is whether it was Sanctum or Saurian, once that board hit like the table and it was established, unless they had a board wipe, it was very hard to deal with. And a lot of the times, even if they did had a board wipe, I could just Grim Reminder and recur that again and make it things very challenging for my opponent. Saurian Egg was a weird one. I really liked it and it did help with things, but it was interesting to use it. I kind of sometimes even liked it as a way just to cycle through my deck a little bit quicker. Because of the Grim Reminder, I didn't mind maybe potentially getting some of my Sanctum cards in the discard. So that was one really interesting part of the deck. But without a doubt, Saurus Rex put in a lot of work. It was really helpful. Defense Initiative. This card was so crucial. It has a capture icon on it as well. And I would literally sometimes be able to, within my first 2 turns, basically go Saurus Rex turn 1, and then drop a Scylla and a Charybdis. And then I would use Saurus Rex to reap, especially if it was turn 1, and I grab this just as a ward protection and keep abusing the Saurian side of things. So that was a really cool thing. So I really liked this card. It put in a ton of work. So all said, this was a great deck. I really liked it. I will definitely be playing it some more, and now it's time to figure out what is the next deck going to be in the deep dive. So you'll have to let me know what you think of this deck as well, and maybe you've seen me open some stuff and there's one you'd like me to go a deep dive with. So if there's any candidates you can think of, please comment below or reach out to me on Instagram or Twitter. I'd love it. And of course, check out my stream on Twitch this Tuesday coming up, where I'll have a Would You Rather pairing to be played in that. So thanks everyone for tuning in and always commenting and giving me your support and feedback. And as always, may your ember never be stolen and your keys forged promptly. Have a good one.